Hello, welcome to Bloke on the Range, and today we're going to talk a bit about the transition from the service rifle B era of match shooting to the target rifle era. What I've got in front of me here are two of the three official Enfield built rifles, and there were a plethora of gunsmith built rifles, and I've showed one on the channel before, but we're going to get into the background of the whys and the wherefores of what was going on here. Now, as a reminder, service rifle A was the service rifle as issued, shot by military personnel in competition. Service rifle B was the service rifle with target sights and certain adaptations for comfort, centre bedding, packing in the case of an SMLE, mid-sling swivels like on the sniper rifles. And from the 1950s onwards, the service rifle transitioned from being the rifle number 4 in soldiers' hands to the L1A1 SLR. This was deemed not really accurate enough for serious target shooting, which, I'm going to do my first tangent already, is a bit of a shame. It was a bit of a mistake, because the National Rifle Association had charitable status on the basis of that its existence, its activities helped the defence of the realm. And in World War I, it was turned into a school of musketry, and NRA coaches became official instructors in the military and helped to get the standard of shooting up. The facilities at Bisley were used again in World War II, although mostly for mortars and machine guns, if I remember rightly. Don't quote me on that. The fact that the SLR wasn't really deemed accurate enough broke the link between serious competition shooting and the service rifle. This didn't happen in Switzerland because the competition program was based heavily around the service rifle because of the militia system. It was rather more integrated, and in fact, the K31 was superseded by the Sturmgewehr 57, quite heavy barrel, chunky, excellent sights, bipod. In fact, they then had to allow target sights to be put onto the K31 so that they could keep up with the 57s. But anyway, that broke that link, and sort of the first Commonwealth step in that direction was 1964. The Dominion of Canada Rifle Association approved No. 4 rifles with 7.62 NATO barrels with target sights for competition. Now, apparently these were not particularly successful experiments, particularly at short range. Long range, they shot comparatively much better in terms of angular group. And another tangent, Brits think about groups, and Commonwealth types think about groups in terms of their minutes of angle. So the angle they subtend on the target, not the size of the group in inches, because the targets are scaled. Anyway. So subsequent to the DCRA rifle, there were experiments carried out in the UK with continental target rifles, because they were already being used on the continent in similar configurations to what became target rifle. And the three mentioned in the book on the subject are the Schutzen Larsen from Denmark, the Kongsberg from Norway, and the Carl Gustav M63 from Sweden. And by 1968, the barrels that were being used for them were being supplied fitted for No. 4s and for Mauser 98 actions. And in the 1968 season, officially target rifle was inaugurated, but it didn't just stop. So it wasn't service rifle B stopped immediately and target rifle took over and everyone had to re-equip. There was a transition period of several years where some competitions were on one, some competitions were on the other, and so on. So the initial definition of a target rifle was that it had to be 7.62 NATO, it had to be a bolt action of conventional design available in quantity, and there was a committee that decided on these things. Iron sights, no more than 5.25 kilos in weight, the trigger had to be able to lift 1.5 kilos, and there were all sorts of things you could do with it. Neither of these have rails and hand stops, but rails and hand stops were allowed, single point slings were allowed, and basically within those bounds you could do pretty much what you want. And then sort of there were purpose-built rifles at the time. There were sort of Tanner, Gruninger, Elmiger, I believe at the time, ISSF type 300-meter rifles that were adapted with British-style sights for dealing with the various ranges. But it was common, due to cost and availability, to have converted military actions, and the typical ones used were No. 4s, P14/M17, and Mauser 98. And they were the big ones. And a lot of people will have had a P14 and a No. 4 that they would have used with the P14 at short range and the No. 4 at long range, and they'll have had them converted. And people often kept up with using a P14 M17 or Mauser at short range, and short range became 300, 500, and 600. And then these things were deemed to be sort of the ultimate in the long-range rifles because of compensation, which I mentioned briefly in the previous video on this. I'll put a link up in the description, and we will go into that in much more detail at an appropriate moment. Now, Enfield wanted in on the game and produced 3 target rifles. The first is the L39A1, and this is the official one that was issued to military units for target rifle shooting. These were supplied without sights, no rail, no nothing, and a 303 magazine. All of them are actually fitted from serial number 10 onwards. All of them are fitted for the 7.62 magazine, and I'll talk about this when I'm in front of the camera. There was also the No. 4 7.62 CONV, which is this rifle with this butt, and they were mostly supplied to the Army Rifle Association for purchase by units, and they were supplied with the 7.62 magazine and with, I believe, Parker Hale 5C sights already fitted. And then the Envoy, this one, was the commercial product. It's a bit better finished, and it's got a number 8 style stock on it. So I think that just about finishes the blather, and we can then bring these forward to the camera and take a closer look and blather some more about serial numbers and boring stuff like that. So let's start off with the L39A1. It's the simplest conversion, although I say conversion, they're not conversions, they're actually made up on new actions and that were left over in stock because there was zillions of them, and they're made up on Mark II type actions, which you can see from the stocking up there, although that is not definitive because it's possible to put a Mark II stock on a Mark I receiver. So these are hung trigger. Now, these are the target rifle counterpart of the L42 sniper rifle, which were conversions for No. 4 Mark I Ts. And whereas, as I said, these are new build. And compared to this AJ Parker service rifle B, I mean, fundamentally, up the back end, it's quite common to see these little front sight insert holders, and they hold the little front sight inserts, the smaller ones. This has a larger target tunnel on it, so that's probably why there's nothing in there. Now, up the front end, we've got the classic Enfield hammer forged barrel left with the forgings on. They weren't finish machined, so they've got a lovely spiral pattern. And if I zoom in, you can see the spiral pattern, and they're blued and then coated in Suncorite paint. And then at the front end, we've got soldered or glued on to the end of the barrel. We've got a band with a block which has a set screw in there, and it's an AJ Parker Anschutz size 18mm target tunnel. So looking at the left side of the receiver here, it's sort of finished in the classic military style blued and Suncorite, not particularly thick Suncorite, you see it's gone through. And then marked up 7.62mm L39A1 and UE, so made by Enfield. I believe these are probably for Zachary Mark II receivers. 69, so 1969 A182. So let's quickly talk about production figures. Now, the L39s and the pre-series trials rifles and the 7.62 CONVs are one single serial number range, and there were 1,183 delivered in total from 1968 to 1972 in 70 batches. I've already said what went where. If you're interested in really delving down into proper geeky serial number ranges, I'll put a link in the description to a page on the Lee-Enfield Rifle Association website, so you can take a look at that. Now, as I said before, they were supplied with the 303 magazine because in target rifle you only use the magazine as a loading platform for single shots. However, all of them except serial numbers 1 to 9 are cut in there for the lips of the Enfield 7.62 magazine, and these were available, so you often see them retrofitted, and this one is from an L42 series, CR141A. There's other markings, they're identical magazines, but if they're intended to go on an L8 rifle, they have a different marking. But there's a pair of cuts in there so that the lips don't foul. Now this one has an AJ Parker 1/4 minute click twin zero rear sight. Of course you need the windage adjustment if you're going to shoot at 1,000 yards, and classic multi-hole. It's annoying, it's got it's on the bottom, but you can adjust the aperture, and in fact this one is loose. I can just take it off and show you more clearly by clicking that across. You've got 6 different hole sizes to cope with differing lighting conditions. Now if we take the bolt out, this one has an unusually long extractor on it. I suspect, but I'm not entirely sure, whether they were issued with a 303 or a 7.62 extractor, because for extraction it makes no difference, it only makes a difference for ejection. This is a hugely long, unusual one, possibly a commercial. Someone has suggested that this is an AJ Parker made one. The bolt head here is marked up with a 19-ton service pressure proof. Now it's often confusing that the British proof marks, they put the service pressure that it's proof to, not the proof pressure. And some people say, what, they're only proofing them to 19? No, it's a 19-ton service pressure, not a 19-ton proof cartridge pressure. And in fact, another point is that the over travel on these, the over rotation on these bolts tends to be a little less than on an infantry rifle. So, yeah. So just to finish up with the L39, the 7.62 CONVs literally just have this shape of butt on them and are otherwise the same rifle, always fitted with a 7.62 mag and already supplied with sights. So moving on to the Envoy now, it's just the commercial version of the same thing with a bit more of an ergonomic forend, identical to the one on the No. 8 rifle in profile, although those tend to be darker wood. I have seen Envoys, although it could have been a Gunsmith-made one with darker wood, but same barrel, same arrangement at the front end. They're actually the same barrels as the L42, I forgot to mention that. The only difference is how they're machined for the front sight, because the L42s, they refitted the No. 4 front sight, whereas these take one on a more modern band. And yeah, fundamentally, No. 8's shaped butt. This is basically a very similar profile in the hand to a Springfield C stock or an M1 Garand stock. And it is an improvement. It's not modern. I mean, you do also see people retrofitting a more modern butt with a deeper pistol grip, chunkier butt, higher cheek piece, or a Monte Carlo Sporter style onto them, because I mean they're a modular design. Now markings: Envoy 7.62 mm, Enfield Cypher 69, and this one's E486. They all appear to have been made in 1969. I've seen serial numbers in one of the Skeleton books. It's in the 500 series. I don't know how many were actually made. I'm sure someone does. If you know, let me know, please. The 1970 Palmer match was held in the UK, and the rifles which were supplied by the host country were these, Fulton regulated, and with positioning dowels and tricked up on the inside. The finish on this is higher quality than the L39. Now all of these are true free floats. It is a big, stiff, heavy barrel. It doesn't need up pressure anywhere as a result. And these and commercial equivalent rifles were still winning the Queen's Prize into the 80s at least, possibly even into the 90s, and certainly with the 144 grain ammunition they could hold their own against the modern rigid actions until the ammunition got better. Nowadays they're behind the curve. They're referred to as transitional target rifles, and yeah, they're relegated to beginners and fun. Sights wise, basically an identical sight there. This one's marked up 7.62 mm on the elevation scale, quarter minute clicks again, and the reason for quarter-minute clicks is that the rifle and ammunition combination justified it, whereas with the SRB No. 4s in 303 with the lighter military barrels, it really didn't justify having anything better than half-minute clicks. Now, as a final note, these were all supplied with a 7.62 magazine and obviously all cut for it. They are numbered to the rifle, and they were also definitely all supplied with a 7.62 extractor. However, this one has a 303 extractor, so either that one got robbed for another project, or whoever owned this rifle decided they wanted a bit less resistance in closing the bolt, because these are, well, Enfields are controlled feed, so normally as the round comes out the magazine it slips up under the extractor. But if you're just dropping a round in there and using it as a loading platform, the extractor has to clip over, and the shorter 303 extractor will present less resistance to doing so. So that's the close-up done. So these two are basically in as issued condition as they came out of the factory, with a little exception of the little holder there on the L39. You do see variations because the stocks are available commercially, so sometimes you'll see an L39 with the number 8 style butt on it. You'll also see gunsmith conversions that are absolutely identical because Enfield sold the barrels, the stocks are available. Well, this woodwork was already on a number 4 rifle, so there's all sorts of various equivalents, and there's quite a difference in price between an actual L39 or 7.62 CONV or an Envoy versus a gunsmith made one, even though they're probably identical rifles. Fundamentally, it's just one was made like that by Enfield and the other wasn't. So I hope that was at least vaguely interesting. Thank you so much for watching this far. Thank you so much for all the patron support we get to keep the channel ticking along nicely, and see you again sometime. Bye.